Well, thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Captain Indilis, to have invited me here. It's a great privilege to be with you and in general as president of IMPA, being invited to talk about pilotage to pilot. Well, this is a highlight for me all the time. I would like to also thank the board of directors of TUMPA to organize this. It was really well done. It's a world class event, and I congratulate you for that. So last time I was in Turkey is 20 years ago. And the time before was 20 years back in 1986 when I was going through the Straits. So I promise you that the next time won't be in 20 years. I'll try to come back sooner than that. And of course, I would have loved to stay the week to visit many of the things that you wanted to show me, but I need to be back in London tomorrow. So next time I will stay longer. Well, in 2004, I was here to attend the IMPA Congress. It took place at the Mamara Hotel at the Texan Place. And the opening ceremony, one of the speakers was the former Secretary General of IMO, Admiral Efthymios Mitropoulos. And in his opening speech, he said, and I quote, "The Turkish Straits are the spiritual home of pilotage." And he went on saying that pilotage was almost born here in this region many, many thousand years ago. So for me to be here to talk about pilotage is like the Mecca of pilotage. That's where things started. And Captain Indilis asked me to discuss about certain aspect of pilotage, and in particular, the regimes that we are in, especially talking about competition and the effect it can have on the service, and of course, on the pilot's life also. So, as home to the Strait of Istanbul, one of the most complex and congested waterways in the world, Turkey is indeed the most appropriate place to discuss the role of pilots in serving the public interests and the regime that best support this idea. IMPA, our association, has long argued that the public interest is best served when pilotage services are provided exclusively through independent public authorities. That in absence of commercial pressure, pilots are more free to exercise sound, independent judgment during high-risk operations. Not only this saves lives, it protects the environment and reduces the amount of asset lost. And of course, in essence, independent provision of pilotage protect at the end the public interest, the country's interests. During this opening ceremony in 2004, during the IMPA Congress, we also had one speaker, which I guess everybody knows, was Binali Yildirim. He was back then Minister of Transport. And he also made a welcoming speech. And in his welcoming speech, and I will quote, he said, "Pilots have a key role to play. First of all, they are citizens protecting their own property. Briefly, we can say that pilots are the key elements for sustainability of maritime transportation in Turkey." Unquote. So that was his opening statement at our Congress 20 years ago. So, despite all the evidence of how the pilotage system should work, there's still a few places around the world that accept competition in pilotage services. Two regional states in Australia, for example, Queensland and Victoria, permit a sort of competition. This is typically limited to coastal pilotage or to the possibility of bidding every few years on the right to become the exclusive provider of pilotage services in a designated area. Sound familiar? In other words, it's the right to be the only operator of a service for a number of years in that area. I'll come back to that later. Argentina also permits competition, and Denmark has also introduced the possibility of competition, although in practical terms, my understanding is that the practice is actually limited in light of the near total dominance of only one group of pilots. So that's how they tackle their problem. There are good reasons why the rest of the planet has decided not to have competition in their system. Competition is based on the belief that it will increase value by having the same or a better service at a lower cost. Unfortunately, in matters regarding public safety, this belief is not true. In Australia, come back again to Australia, two features of competitive pilotage that are most concerning are its impact on the quality of service and also the fact that actual quality of service is really only known to the commercial provider itself. In other words, the system encourages a lack of transparency as a result of the commercial interests of the provider to keep its contract. This information asymmetry is made worse by over-reliance and overconfidence in management systems as a determinant of quality and perceptions that simulator training, for example, as an alternative to hands-on training, is better. Commercial providers know the elevated risk of maritime safety and environmental incidents they expose others to. But competent authorities, industry, and civil societies, for their part, do not. In Argentina, experience indicates that both safety and efficiency have declined significantly following the introduction of competition, with a 122% increase in pilotage fees and a transformation of pilotage from 0 incidents to twice the international average for ships under pilotage between 1999 and 2018. In Denmark, the efficiency of the state-owned pilotage enterprise has been found by the Danish government to have declined by 9% since the introduction of competition. And a noticeable increase in service delivery costs per piloted miles has also been noted. In the case of transit pilotage in Denmark, which is ships not going to port, only transiting the Great Belt, competition has actually resulted in a market failure with an insufficient number of pilots available to service demand from ships. While these places often opt to dismiss criticism of their own actions, other jurisdictions that briefly experimented with competition have experienced a bitter reality and, as a result, decided to abolish their competition laws and revert back to a fully regulated pilotage. For example, in Florida, in 1986, recognizing the significant conflict between private economic needs versus the public interest, the state abolished competition. Guarding against competition in pilotage is now explicitly recognized in the State Pilotage Act, which stipulates, and I quote, Piloting is an essential service of such paramount importance that its continued existence must be secured by the state and may not be left open to market forces, unquote. In the same way, in Alaska, this time, following the New Amsterdam grounding in 1997 and responding to the findings of the National Transport Safety Board, following the infamous Exxon Valdez accident, the state abolished competition altogether. The rest of the world, including Turkey so far, has adhered to the universally accepted principle that pilotage services in a compulsory pilotage area should be provided exclusively by a single group of pilots who are not subject to undue commercial pressures to perform and keep their work. It is also the case with the European Union, which has accepted that competition and pilotage should not mix and has reserved pilotage out of the competition elements of the Port Services Regulation. This position is driven by an understanding of how competition arms competent authorities, industry, and the public interest, as well as the cost of experimenting with it. In the 2018 study commissioned by Transport Canada, KPMG mentioned that while monopolies can negatively impact some industries, competition in pilotage can actually have much greater negative impacts than a monopoly. When pilots or pilot organizations compete, there is an incentive to cut costs through reduced focus on both safety and quality, and also to maximize profit wherever possible. So why do competition and pilotage not mix? Compulsory pilotage is not like any other professional services. It is not provided to a consumer for their exclusive benefit. The user may pay pilotage fees, but the pilot is an agent of the government, providing safety as a benefit for the public first, for their country first. Moreover, compulsory pilotage is a non-discriminatory. It must be available to all ships that require it, regardless of the income you might get from it. And it should be all the time. This means having licensed pilots on rotations for duty, well-rested and well-trained. This means having enabling infrastructure like pilot boats and crews. Also means comprehensive training programs, including boat simulator training and practical training on the water. This also means other necessary ancillary supporting services and arrangements are available irrespective of the number of ships requiring the service at any given time. By introducing competition, competent authorities inevitably accept that the public will receive an inferior service driven by the lowest cost desired to maximize profit instead. Pilots need to be able to exercise professional judgment as agents of the government who license them, free from all other considerations. The CMA-CGM Centaurus incident in Jebel Ali in 2017 exemplifies the negative consequence for safety and efficient port operations of pilots being subject to commercial pressure. Those guys, if they were doing the maneuver in less time than others, they receive bonuses. If you go full speed instead of dead slow, you're gonna get more bonus at the end of the year. So what they were doing is, instead of boarding at the pilot station, they waited that the ship comes in closer to the port, getting later on board to finish the job early so their piloting time would be shorter and get more bonus. So I think it's quite clear. Maintaining modern pilotage services is capital intensive. For this to be possible, services must be protected from the disruptive, short-term vision of commercial considerations. They must also be protected from the economic bargaining power of ports, ship owners, and charterers. By introducing competition, competent authorities accept that the quality of pilotage provided to the public is, in fact, determined by the private interests and willingness to pay of ship owners and charterers. Let's also consider economies and economies of scale. Having multiple providers in the same waters implies financing more service delivery infrastructure and support more personnel that would otherwise be necessary. Conversely, having only one provider makes economies of scale, of course, more likely. By introducing competition, competent authorities reveal a preference for inefficiencies and a tendency to higher costs in service provision. Finally, competition requires greater regulatory involvement in licensing, training, compliance, and rate setting, as well as managing the competitive environment itself. This, in itself, is a less efficient use of resources. By introducing competition, competent authorities, therefore, accept that they must work harder to deliver even basic functioning pilotage services. Authorities may even need to directly intervene and provide pilotage services in areas where a low prospect or decline in profit results in under-provision and ships being unable to access basic pilotage services. The absence of competition also protects competent authorities by establishing a clear framework that cannot easily be altered by the lobby of private stakeholders seeking to maximize their profit through deregulation. So, if virtually all countries have concluded that competition has no place in an effective pilotage system, how does one create and maintain such an effective system? Firstly, it needs to be understood and accepted by the authorities that pilotage is an essential public service. They have to understand that. Who would put in the same city two fire stations in competition to one another? Who would think of that? So it's the same for pilotage services. It's funny because in the Great Fire of London in 1666, London burned down. But back then, their fire station were in competition. Is that funny? So when the fire patrol came by the street, they have a sign at each door, which were the clients. So if they're passing to a street, oh, this one is not our client, the hell with it. Until they reach a place, oh, this is our client, let's put the fire out. So that's how London was destroyed by fire, because of competitive fire stations. So that's when they decided that maybe it's not a good idea to have competition between fire stations. Little story. So, pilotage benefits society, the environment, and economic prosperity of a country through the safe, reliable, and efficient movement of cargo and passengers. Using independent, government-licensed professionals with expert knowledge of high-risk local waters to direct the navigation of ships has been shown to reduce the risk of accidents by 528 times. This is supported by a study made in 2022 by Thames, and some of you here have seen the presentation at IMO about this. Facts supported this. Regulated pilotage has remarkably low incident rates. According to the international group of P&I Club, there are only 1.9 safety incidents, resulting in a P&I claim of more than $5 million for every 10 million acts of pilotage. Further, according to the IMO GISIS base, there are not more than 1.05 very serious marine casualties for every 10 million acts of pilotage. So regulated pilotage monopolies work very well and they serve the public very well. So those numbers shows that. Secondly, pilotage is an activity that rests on human expertise, and its effectiveness depends not only on the quality of its human capital, but the conditions in which it operates. This requires vigilance and to establish and maintain and enforce rigorous standards in the initial and ongoing training and licensing of pilots and holders of pilotage certificates. Thirdly, pilotage system must reflect local differences. The most effective systems have a core national standards that define objectives but allow delivery to be tailored to the need of a particular area. For example, this means having minimum national standards for training based on IMO Resolution A960. Finally, the regulatory framework for pilotage needs to be able to evolve with changing circumstances, flexible enough to allow new pilotage practice to be introduced when warranted, but robust enough not to tolerate reductions in safety and quality of practices conflicting with the public interest. Before concluding, I would like to touch on the work IMPA is doing with experts in complex systems at the University of York in UK. This work is guided by the fact pilotage is a complex system, sensitive to small changes in regulation, operational practice, and technology. There's no doubt this work will show, among other things, that the effectiveness of pilotage is heavily reliant on having the right regulatory framework. So it does mean, in fact, that if somebody thinks that in changing only one line in regulation, it's only one line, it's a minimal thing, it won't have any effect. Well, guess what? It might destroy the whole system because that component might be the thing you need to glue the other things together. And the right example of this is the story of the Boeing 737 MAX. By changing only the position of the engines, it had impacted many, many other components of the plane that they had to readjust. So by introducing a new way to fail, and it happened, by changing only one component of the entire plane. In conclusion, as mentioned, there are few places where competition is permitted in maritime pilotage. The rest of the world has either rectified or avoided the mistake altogether. Because of the facts we have reviewed, IMPA is opposed to competition and instead supports the approach taken by the overwhelming majority of countries in the world. Policymakers and regulators should continue to reject competition, both in respect of the overall right to deliver pilotage services and in respect of individual acts of pilotage, because this compromises the independence of service providers from undue commercial pressure, and in turn, this undermines the public interest. Further, and this is sometimes where some people don't understand, is this serves the interests of policymakers and regulators themselves, who are accountable to the public when things go wrong. And as the evidence suggests, they will, in one way another. IMPA strongly recommends that competent authorities work with pilots organization to have a regulatory system for pilotage which achieves three things, basically. First, pilots trained and licensed in a manner aligned with IMO Resolution 8960 and able to direct the navigation of ships free from undue influence and commercial pressure. Second, modern and well-resourced pilotage services delivering an efficient, non-discriminatory service as part of the framework that encourages maintaining the level of service rather than pursuing profit maximization. And finally, third, assurance of transparency and safety and quality through regulation that demonstrates a commitment to the public interest and thereby ensures the reputation of both policymakers and regulators and pilots. To keep achieving this, the way is straightforward. Pilotage services in any compulsory pilotage area should be provided exclusively by a single group of pilots, free from undue commercial pressure. Thank you. Inshallah. I was just going to say, if somebody have any questions about anything, I'll be happy to answer. I'd like to come back a bit about, if I may, I'd like to come back a bit about the story of Australia, that they are bidding every few years for the license to operate in a compulsory region. It was argued by the Australian government that this is not competition. But this is a very subtle way to have competition. It doesn't look that in the front, but it is competition. And there's one good example of this is the Brisbane Pilots, that they were operating there for ages. So one day they had to redo their bid, and guess what? The government gave the bid to another company. 35 pilots from the day to the next day lost their job, all their income, no more money to provide for their family. It happened in one day. So if you look at this now, all the pilots that are now giving the service, they feel this commercial pressure. Because when they're going to have to reapply to the next bid in 5 years, what do you think they will do? They'll try to bid the lowest possible because they know they experienced that in the past. So something similar might happen to me. So this is competition. Regardless of what people tell you, this is competition. That's part of the bid. So the company that will bid against the existing pilot group or his existing company, they will have this argument to the government, oh, I can do it for 190 pilots. I can do it for so much. So who's losing at the end is the pilot doing the job. In many ways, compensation will go down probably because you will have a businessman offering the service. Pilot will lose their compensation. They will also work more because to be profitable, they will lower the number of pilots, make them work harder to be able to bid low with the government. And then next, it's going to be training. You don't need that training. You're the best pilot in the world. Why should I pay for training? So it's It's an ongoing thing. Competition, it's a race to the bottom, because everybody will want to be able to win the bid, and that's the race to the bottom. And there's no other way of explaining it. That's what the experience showed us everywhere else in the world that tried that. Yes. Well, in 2002, when IMO agreed on the resolution A960, on the preamble, it was recognized by the member states that pilotage is a national business, national affairs for the member states. So by agreeing with this, IMO would not regulate pilotage at the IMO level, because it would be contrary to their own resolution that they accepted, and that's what the pilots wanted to. I think if IMO would regulate pilotage, we would be in a very worse place, because IMO, it's always minimum standards for whatever they regulate. And we have a good example with pilot ladders in the past. It was always bare minimum all the time. So the ship owners, in private discussions, recognizes that, you know, in different areas where competition is provided, they have more incident and the risks are higher, and they pay more. Like in Argentina, they're paying over 100% more than they were paying before competition. So they clearly see that. But then again, as ship owners are, they don't want to rock the political boat, so they just pay and that's it. The insurers, the maritime insurers, they have very good data about that. They showed me once, I think it was in 2004, in the IMPA AGM in Portugal. The maritime insurer spoke there, and he showed a chart with blank countries. You could not see the countries, but you saw the accident rates. And then you see that the sum line, the accident rates were very high. So he took out the blank, and it was exactly the countries we're talking about, Argentina and others. So there's a direct link between safety and competition, and even the insurers, they know that. So, but to your very question, I think there's a couple of organizations that we can approach that would support our vision, especially tankers owner associations. I think they are very risk averse. They don't want to have any accident. So they are natural allies, if you will. But are they going to speak up publicly? That's another story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.